A medieval knight was required to fight at most 40 days a year, 40. The rest, almost 11 months, he spent doing something else entirely. And that something else has nothing to do with what you're picturing right now. Because the image we carry around, the mounted warrior, sword drawn, galloping from one battle to the next, is real. But it's a tiny slice of his actual life. The part nobody talks about is stranger, more violent in ways you don't expect. And it explains how a man with nothing to his name became the most powerful person in all of England. That's what we're looking at. What filled the other 325 days? Why most of it involved money and dust, and how a sport the church itself banned built fortunes bigger than any war ever did. First, the deal. Under the feudal system, a knight received a piece of land, a fief, from a lord or the king, not a gift. Payment up front. In return, he owed 40 days of military service per year. Could be a battle, a siege, an armed escort. But it was 40 days, and then he went home. And here's what nobody brings up. Some knights didn't even serve those 40 days. There was a tax called scutage, from the Latin scutum shield, that worked like a buyout. You paid, and the king hired mercenaries in your place. In England, the system existed under Henry the Royal in the early 1100s, and it got so common that knight gradually stopped meaning warrior and started meaning landowner who owes taxes. Some of these men never held a sword in real combat, but for those who took the job seriously, the other 11 months started before sunrise. Training wasn't optional. A knight who lost his edge lost the ability to survive on a battlefield, and nobody was going to wait for him to catch up. The most basic exercise was the pell, a wooden post driven into the ground. The knight struck it with training swords over and over, building arm strength and cutting precision. Sounds primitive, and it was. But the exercise came from the Romans. The word traces back to the Latin paulo, stake, and it lasted for centuries because it worked. Then came the quintain, a rotating arm with a shield on one side and a counterweight on the other. A mounted knight had to hit the shield with his lance at full gallop and ride past fast enough to dodge the counterweight swinging back. Miss the timing, and you hit the dirt. Beyond that, there was wrestling, rough riding, and bow practice. All routine. And the training swords were deliberately heavier than the real ones, so when the moment came, the actual weapon would feel light. But solo practice had a ceiling. Hitting a post doesn't teach you to think in chaos, to react when 3 mounted knights come at you from different angles at once. For that, there was something else. And most knights lived for it. The medieval tournament was not what you've seen in the movies. Forget 2 knights galloping toward each other with lances on a fenced track. That came later. The original format, the tournoi or melee, was a simulated battle on an absurd scale. 2 teams of knights, sometimes hundreds of them, positioned across a field that could stretch several square miles. Villages, forests, and streams sat in the middle of the playing field. When the signal dropped, they charged with the same weapons they'd use in real war. The goal wasn't to end your opponent, it was to capture him. A knight who got knocked down had to surrender his horse, his armor, and pay a cash ransom. It was violent, chaotic, and after the first few minutes, dust and noise made it impossible to tell friend from enemy. The church despised all of it. In 1139, the Second Lateran Council banned tournaments outright. Canon 14 was blunt. Any knight who died in a tournament would be denied a Christian burial. In the 12th century, that threat should have frozen any man of faith in his tracks. For nearly a century, tournaments were forbidden in England. None of it worked. The tournaments kept going, bigger every year. The reason was simple. They paid. and nobody understood that better than a man born with absolutely nothing. William Marshal was born around 1146, fourth son of a minor baron. In feudal logic, that meant no land, no title, no money. Everything went to the older brothers. At 12, he was shipped to Normandy to train under a nobleman named William de Tancarville. There, he earned the nickname Greedy Guts for eating too much. When his father died, it confirmed what he already knew. No inheritance was coming. What he had left was the only thing he knew how to do. In 1167, Marshal entered his first tournament at Le Mans. He won, captured several knights, and walked away with 4.5 warhorses, probably split a ransom with another competitor. From there, he turned tournaments into a profession, traveling the circuit across northern France like a modern pro athlete. Pleur, joignez, aîné, épernon. What Marshal figured out was that the tournament was a market. Before each melee, he assessed which opponents were rich enough to fetch a good ransom. He timed his entry, held his team back until the field was exhausted, then rode in to capture the most valuable targets with minimum effort. At one competition in Eu, on Normandy's border with Picardy, he captured 10 knights and 12 horses in a single day. And when they found him after one particularly rough melee, he wasn't celebrating. He was at the blacksmith's forge, head on the anvil, while the smith hammered his helmet back into shape so they could pull it off. The numbers across Marshal's career are hard to pin down. His biography, L'Histoire de Guillaume le Marshal, was commissioned by his family and leans toward glory. But the scale is consistent. On his deathbed, Marshal claimed over 500 knights captured. Even having that for the biographer's enthusiasm, it's a staggering record. To grasp what that meant in money, you need to know what a horse was worth. A destrier, a trained warhorse, cost more than most knights earned in a full year of service. Capture one and sell it, or keep it for the next tournament, and the gains compounded fast. In the 1170s, Marshal formed a partnership with a Flemish knight named Roger de Gaugy. The pair had a clerk who recorded 103 knights captured during one stretch of competitions. The tournament was the financial market of medieval knighthood, and like any market, it had its crashes. In 1241, a tournament near Neuss in Germany ended with 60 to 80 knights and squires dead. Not from sword blows, from heat. The day was scorching. Horses and men kicked up a dust cloud that swallowed the field, and inside armor weighing up to 40 kilos, dozens of competitors suffocated. Guinness records it as the deadliest tournament in history. But for those who survived and won, the circuit was the fastest social ladder in medieval Europe. And when the tournament ended, the knight went home to a routine that didn't involve a single blade, because most of a landowning knight's time was spent managing that land. The physical labor fell to peasants, plowing, planting, harvesting, but the knight made sure crops came in on time, livestock was cared for before slaughter, and operations like mills and bakeries kept running and generating income. If production dropped, he couldn't cover the cost of his own equipment, and staying equipped as a knight was expensive. It's the opposite of the image we hold. The warrior in gleaming armor spent most of his days doing what we'd now call rural estate management, settling disputes between peasants, collecting rents, overseeing repairs, and when he wasn't managing land, he was tending to something even more unexpected. Falconry. Carrying a bird of prey on your fist wasn't a hobby. It was a statement of rank. The type of bird you carried told everyone where you sat in the hierarchy. According to the Book of St. Albans from 1486, there was a rigid scale. An emperor got an eagle, a prince a peregrine falcon, a knight a soccer falcon. Keeping a bird above your station was a crime, and the punishment could be losing your hands. The birds demanded daily care, weighing, adjusted feeding, training through positive reinforcement. They lived in specialized structures called mews, and a head falconer could rank higher than other household officers. Every autumn, knights from across Europe gathered at fairs to bid on the best birds captured that year. When he wasn't with birds, the knight hunted boar and deer. Social events involving family, nobles, and dozens of servants, or played chess and backgammon in the evenings, or watched troubadours perform. And every day, without exception, he attended morning mass. And that code of chivalry we romanticize? In practice, a good chunk of it was a list of things knights needed to stop doing. One set of rules included: don't beat up priests, don't steal livestock, don't kidnap random people, don't burn houses for no reason, and don't attack women. That these things needed spelling out says plenty about what some knights did when nobody was watching. But at least one man took the code seriously. The same one who turned tournaments into a career. And what happened to him next, nobody could have predicted. William Marshal served 5 English kings: Henry II, Henry the Young King, Richard I, John, and Henry III. Every change of power could have ended him. He was accused of sleeping with the young king's wife, expelled from court, forced to restart on the tournament circuit. He went on crusade after the young king died of dysentery. Came back, was taken in again, and received as his bride the wealthiest heiress in England, Isabel de Clare, gaining the title of Earl of Pembroke, castles in Wales, and lands in Ireland. Under King John, he helped mediate the crisis that led to Magna Carta in 1215. When John died in 1216, leaving a 9-year-old heir, Marshal at 70, was named Regent of England. A year later, at the Battle of Lincoln in 1217, he insisted on leading the charge himself against invading French forces. 71 years old, mounted at the front. He won. The victory secured the throne for young Henry III and drove the French out. Marshal died in 1219. On his deathbed, he refused to sell his robes and furs for alms. He gave them to his household knights instead. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Stephen Langton, called him the greatest knight who ever lived. His biography, over 19,000 lines long, is the only surviving written account of a non-royal from the entire High Middle Ages. And it all started with a kid who had no inheritance, swinging at other knights in dusty fields across northern France. So, what did knights do when they weren't at war? Almost everything. They managed farms. They trained on wooden posts. They gambled their lives and fortunes in tournaments the church itself considered sinful. They carried falcons that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. And once in a while, one of them used all of that to change the history of an entire country. The question is, if you'd been born into that world, no land, no name, no inheritance, what would you have done with your 325 days? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. There are plenty more where this came from. See you in the next one.